Greetings. What's up? It's Deborah. Happy to be here. Happy Friday to you. I'm so excited to have here with me Melody Self. I'm so pumped. We're going to have a really lit discussion today. Melody, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Melody, and I am a life coach, and I love helping women, especially get out of their hurts and their hangups where they've been caught and stuck, and help them to release them so that they can live their badass life that they dream and envision for themselves.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and you have we're going to hear a lot about your story today. You have a very interesting and adventurous background. So I'm looking forward to learning more. And I'm Deborah. I'm a maverick. I help other mavericks and purpose-driven leaders, disruptive leaders, to be able to build certainty from within so that you can show up at your best each day for life and lead at your best and make the impact and the income that you know you were born to make. So this is something that I'm really excited about. This is basically for both Melody and myself. I'll go as far as to say that some of what we're going to be discussing today is our background to our current foreground, where it's not like something that defines us, but it is definitely experiences that help to mold and shape the women that we are today. And we want to pass on what we've learned and also discuss some of the things that we think need to be discussed and we never hear in polite conversation. And it's a problem because if we heard about these things more and we talk about these things more openly, I think they wouldn't be so difficult and challenging for people to go through because often people feel alone. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have a couple people here. If you're here, go ahead and say what's up. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and type #replay. I'll try my best to answer questions. If you type them in there, we'll get to your questions either during the discussion or afterwards. So please feel free to type your thoughts, questions in the comments. We will be responding. And if you give StreamYard, which is what I'm using, permission, then we can see your name here in our dashboard. So that would be really helpful as well. Okay, so we're going to get started with the first question, which is, what is it really like to live with and love someone who torments you? So Melody, go ahead and I'll let you start. I'll chime in afterwards.
For me, it meant that I think for me personally, I hid a lot. So I think even some people that knew me didn't really understand or realize what was going on. And so I would want to kind of blend in. I mean, I'm tall, but I have 7 children, so it wasn't real easy, but I would always cover up, I would make sure that we looked a certain way and everything else. And so I didn't really show up honestly because I'm trying to hide everything that's going on. And you didn't know, sometimes I'd be late to things, or I mean, my sister was telling me even yesterday, Melody, I remember when your first child was born and you had a black eye and you just put a lot of makeup on. I don't remember, things like that. So, it's just a lot of cover-ups. And even now I'm still uncovering things, that I didn't realize.
Yeah, actually, maybe give us a little bit of just a quick synopsis of your background, because I think there was a specific community that you were hiding from.
Well, I mean, really almost everywhere, but especially, I was very involved in church. And so I was a teacher. My background is teaching, but I used to teach in the church and different age levels. I love teaching. So especially from there, because it was very shameful. It was about, you got to pray harder. You got to work on yourself. Maybe you have to bind the devils that are causing you to misreact, act wrong or things like that. And so I felt very unempowered. I didn't feel strong at all. I felt like something's wrong with me, so I was always feeling like I'm the one who's worthless, basically.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And I know for me personally, it was a similar situation. I was a minister, so I had to look a certain way, I had to act the part. And actually, I mean, when I got married, I kind of had already done some unforgivable sins by getting married to someone who was not of the same faith as me. But one thing that I do know is that I was still trying to keep up appearances. And you're right. It's like you don't even realize, even to this day, sometimes certain things, I'm like, why am I having such a hard time communicating to him? Like, I talk to everybody, I have conversations with anyone. I'm not afraid to have a conversation, a real, raw, honest conversation with a stranger, with people I know. Why is it so hard for me to do it with this person? And it's because for so many years, I had suppressed so many things, like, I don't want to start something, let me not say anything. So there's so many levels of suppression that go on. Thank God it's not with everyone anymore. But with him, I still had that challenge. And so it's true. There's a lot of things that you forget, that you kind of stifle or you push down or you suppress so that you can just keep the peace, so to speak, and hopefully, hope that things, my thing was I always hoped that things would blow over. Like, this was a one-time thing and he had a relapse, but he's not really gonna, hopefully this never happens again. And I remember the day I was left stranded on the side of the highway, and I literally had to walk, I don't know how many miles, to find a phone to be able to get myself a ride back home, because I was literally, in fact, I didn't even remember this story until just now. I was literally left on the side of the road on the highway because I said something that upset him. And I had to walk to find a phone or a way to get home. And I remembered saying, I don't mind. I forgive anybody for anything. I'm not that kind of person who holds grudges. I don't have the ability. But this isn't stopping. Like, it just keeps on going. When is this going? And it was like the realization hit me that it was not going to stop unless I stopped it, which I didn't have until that moment. Like, before, I was like, okay, this was just the thing. And, oh, it's because, he didn't have a job, or because this happened, or because that happened. And I was always in this place of trying to, like, resolve the things, so that I was like, okay, well, that's the end of it. And if we just keep on marching along, everyone's got their thing, it'll get better. It'll go away. It'll stop happening. And then there was this day where I was like, it's not stopping. I've got to stop it. And that was both scary as anything and liberating as anything, to be in that place. Nicole says, oh man, y'all are both telling my story also. Beautiful. So maybe you want to share a little bit about that, if you have any thoughts on that moving forward, on how we actually can make it stop. How, if someone is in this situation now where they're getting either physically abused or it's severe verbal abuse, like, and there's different levels, but it's like something where, you don't want your kids hearing it. You don't want anybody else hearing it. I'm not going to say that every time somebody curses that they're verbally abusing you, because everyone speaks differently, and I don't make any judgments. But when it becomes something that's not okay for other people to observe, if it's not okay for them to observe, it's not okay for you to be absorbing it either. So what do they do to make that stop? How can they make it stop?
Yeah, I think for me, I was lost in this for a long time because I'd hear this information, and even I went to counseling and to work on myself, and I was told, like, there's certain books you can pray for your husband and do these things, and I try to do all the right thing, go to church, go to get deliverance, go to pray, memorize the scriptures, do all these things, but it wasn't really ever helping. And then I'd hear like other information, maybe in the self help environment, that says, well, it's your fault that this is happening. I'm like, well, if it's my fault, how do I make it stop? And then then I'd make these, I don't know if, well, if you do this, then I'm going to call the cops. Well, you can only call the cops so many times. You can only do this so many times, or I'm going to leave. Well, you're going to leave, then what happens? Nothing's being still resolved. Okay, I left, but now, okay, I'm coming back. So it still wasn't getting resolved. And it was really hard. I had people, like, when I was asked, I was told, like, by some mentors or something, make sure that you have a safe place. So if something happens, you have a safe place that you can ask. Well, people would say, no, I'm not going to do that for you. And I couldn't even go to the shelter because he knew where it was. So I felt like there was really no safe place. I remember keeping things. Even now I reflect, because I've been working on one of the things. I know, like you said, what is it really like? I never felt safe either. There was always this there was always this uncertainty. It was never feeling safe. And so I would have like important documents with me. I would have extra clothes with me for me and the kids in case something happened. I always knew, like I had it with me. And I always kept it close to me, so it wasn't being left. I had to keep my stuff very private and protected because, there was always this never, my stuff wasn't mine. My things, they would be gone through or things like that. And so that was part of the uncertainty and the way that you're being, emotionally abused, because your environment is never okay. It's always being like ripped apart. And so it's always uncertain.
Mm.
And for me, I think what really helped was me learning who am I? Who am I? And I did things. I became very physically sick because of it, and I didn't realize how bad it got. It got pretty bad where I would pass out all the time. Anything would boom, I'd pass out. And so that was just the way that my body started shutting down in those ways. And so I had to be hyper active and being very conscious of what I ate and how to take care of myself. And so I learned how to take care of me and what I needed, and really go inward and go, who am I? And even now I will have to say, what is Melody like? Because I wasn't allowed to know what Melody liked. You're always like, when there's chaos going all around you and it's in a tormenting way, you don't even realize who you are, what you like, what is okay. Oh, well, you're going to do things the Melody way. Oh my gosh, I'm going to do things the Melody way. That's how it's created. Like, instead of it being a curse, it's a blessing. I'm supposed to do that. And, realizing that it's okay to be who you are. And, everyone has to find that spot in themselves that they're not willing to, that this is it. This is the drawing line. And it's all different for every one of us. And, we don't want it to continue, but getting away from it is also scary, because then we don't know what that path is. I mean, when you're in this, somewhat what's going to happen. It's a circular pattern, and we hate it, but it's circular, and it to some extent. And whenever we start getting out of it, it's scary because we don't know. And they always say the scariest time is getting away, to breaking that, because it's more dangerous. And so you really have to be prepared mentally and emotionally to be ready. So how do we make it stop? I think really has to do with in ourselves. We have to be ready. For me, it was my son getting stage 4 cancer.
Mm.
We can have everyone telling us, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. But when he did that, and it was just so awful, I knew that his environment had to change. I knew that this environment was contributing to his ill health, and we weren't sure if he was going to live or not. And he had stage 4, like all of a sudden, boom, this is a life changing. I mean, we'd already lived through a house fire and lost everything, but this was like really, it was it for us. And I didn't look back. I left, and I knew that there was no way I could go back and put any of us through that again. We couldn't do that. And so it's really about being ready inwardly. And I think that's really, we have to decide. We're ready, and we can't have it go on anymore. We're ready.
This is why I'm having this conversation with you, woman. I have talked to so many people, and you're the first person who gave me a resonant answer with the only answer I came up with. It was the same answer. You, as the individual, have to be ready. You, as the individual, have to care more about yourself, or sometimes maybe your kids, than about the relationship. And it's not about vilifying the other person. It really doesn't have anything to do with the other person. It has to do with you. Are you okay with you? Are you happy with you? Because that's the only way you're going to survive. Because a lot of people leave and come back over and over and over again. Because if they haven't actually gotten okay with them, they're still running the same pattern. It's only a matter of time before it just becomes what they live again. I can't agree with you more. I'm so resonant with this, because this is not what they tell you when you go to a domestic advocate's office, or you call a hotline, or you go to a friend in church. This is not what they tell you. They tell you all of these strategies. I mean, and this is kind of like where my work is, right? My work is all the foundational, and I'm actually going to write about this, because sometimes people don't really understand. It's all the foundational stuff that happens before the strategies can work. Before the strategy of having your, your plastic bag with your passport and your cash and your safe, your safe place and your this and that, before all of that can work, you've got to be okay with you. There's no way that it's going to work, because even it's like a drug addiction. It literally is an addiction. And I used to tell some, Sandy asks a really good question here. We'll answer this, Sandy, about hurting children. I used to have some of my clients, I would tell them, as like, I had two types of clients, because I used to work with relationship detox. And there was the detox. You think about detox, right? There's two ways. You can either go like somebody checks you into, you get checked into forcibly into a rehab, or you do a natural detox with like, herbs and plant foods and whatnot. Both of those can work, but one is like much more gentle, but you have to have the willpower. And the other one is just like you're forced to, right? And when it comes to toxic relationships, you don't want to be the druggie who gets, because that is like, it's always going to get really, really dark and ugly. You want to be the person who's able to go on the juice fasting and, go to like the resort and willingly do the detox, right? So this is like what I've seen. What you and I are really advocating for here is the juice detox, the natural way where you take care of you. When you take care of you, like write this down if you're listening, when you take care of you, when you love on you, when you care about you, it will stop. One way or another. I don't know how, right? But one way or another, it will stop. That's the only natural, loving, gentle way to end domestic violence. Otherwise, in one form or another, you can even leave that partner, get into another relationship, and hit the replay button, and except that one's going to be worse, because it doesn't stay the same. It always gets worse. So I genuinely I'm so grateful for you, because I've wanted to have this conversation for a while. But when you don't have people, this is a topic people's judgments come up like that for. I mean, it's amazing how you can talk about anything and they're like, yes. And then you just say, it's actually not about the other person, it's about me. What do you mean? What? You need to get out of there, or you need to either that, or it's the flip side where it's like, yes, it is all about you. It's your fault that your marriage is screwed up. Either way is wrong. It's not helpful, right? But this is typically what you're going to hear from whoever you talk to. You're going to hear one side or the other. And what we're saying is it's neither of those. It really is about learning how to take care of you. So thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. So we have a question in. Do you want to handle these questions at the end, or do you want to address them as we go?
I don't mind.
So Sandy asks, did either of your husbands ever hurt one of your children?
For me, I didn't knowingly ever allow that to happen. If that did happen, I was way on it. Like, you're not messing with my kids. But, now that after I left, I really find out that there was a lot of emotional things that happened. And even now, even this week, things have been happening, and they're very upset, and I have my kids are 21, the oldest, and the youngest is 7. So I have until next week, I have 4 teenagers, so emotionally, I will say yes, but they have learned, I've taught them a lot of things about how you have to love yourself, and you can't, you have to work on you. And this is the other thing, is whenever you're working on yourself to allow, then even though they keep playing the same tricks and the same things, they don't affect you the same.
Exactly.
So they can come and tell you, oh, I know you always thought you were a loser. Well, this just proves it. So like, I know who I am. I know that that's not who I am. So, okay, you can say that, you can throw that, you can tell me, oh, you're a hoe. Oh, okay, whatever. Like, it doesn't bother me anymore. You can say all these things. I know who I am, and I don't need your approval. I don't need your validation. I don't need your acceptance. I don't need any of that. Like, I'm giving it to me. I'm getting it from God and me, however whatever your relationship is, but I'm not going outside asking it from you, and I don't need it anymore. And so then, it comes in other ways. It comes in that my kids are like, they're on the, they're over there doing things what I didn't expect for them to do, like basically showing me that they got my back, and I didn't expect or ask them to do that, but they already know because they can see. So what
Mm-hmm.
happens is they start seeing the truth, and
Mm-hmm.
they know, they're like, well, then they know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Whew, this is good stuff. This is really good stuff. Nicole says, yes, when I finally built a real community and knew who I was, for the first time, the second and last time took me to taking down all the illusions. Yeah, so basically really having to let go of the illusions that we were holding on to that held that pattern in place. Everything is in, so I always say this, everything is in relationship. You're in relationship with everything. And it's not just people, it's also your possessions, it's money, it's time, it's anything. And every relationship has a pattern. So the way to break patterns, there's a lot of ways to break patterns. You can try to change the other person. We know how that works. Or you can go inside and just change the way you relate with that person, and it will also change the relationship. Some of the really powerful things I love to talk about is it doesn't have to be violent, crazy, brutal. It can actually be quite peaceful. When my partner left, it was peaceful. It was peaceful. And it was really interesting. I'm going to go to the next question here. Why don't people just get out? So this is another one that people get very frustrated because they're like, I keep telling them they need to get out of this relationship and they don't listen. So this is more for the people who are observers of these relationships. What would you tell them is the reason why, maybe to give them a little bit of peace of mind as to why their friend is still in this toxic marriage?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, sometimes I think like for me, I had to be I had to know that I did everything. I mean, I was married 22 years. I had to make sure that I did everything. So I had to make sure that I did all the things that I felt like I could to quote, save the marriage. Because my vision was I'm married for life. I'm not leaving. I'm committed. I love this person. And you know what? They had a terrible upbringing. Their mom left them. This happened, that happened, their dad, whatever it is. And so I'm like, I love them. And I want to be the one person that doesn't give up on them. I want to be the person that loves them. And so for me, that's why I didn't want to I'm not just going to give up. I'm not a quitter.
Yeah.
I don't give up on people.
Yes.
I'm a faithful person. I'm loyal. I stay till the end. I'm not giving up on you. And so that made me feel like I'm a quitter. Like if I'm quitting on them, I'm quitting on me in some way. And so I wasn't ready to do that. And so I had to do everything that I knew that I could or would do, like go to counseling, work on me, do this, change this, do all these things. And then when I knew that I had done everything else, and I knew that between God and me, it was like, there's nothing I can do. And God is saying, this is the right thing to do. This is right for you. This is right for your kids. This is the way out. And so I had to know. So I didn't want that behavior to keep going, but I was doing what I knew at that time. Like I wasn't going to quit, I wasn't going to give up at that moment.
I love it. I will echo your words. I felt this. I'm the same kind of person. I'm very loyal. And I basically became a coach from trying to solve my own problems with my marriage. So for sure, I was well vested in making my relationship work. I forgot to answer the other question that was asked. My husband did not hurt our child physically, but similarly, I have started to notice, some emotional stuff. So we're working through that right now. And same thing, like same as Melody said. I mean, that's why even though our situations and our relationship situations were very, very different, we're basically saying the same thing because we both had a very similar way of approaching it, where it was like, okay, I'm loyal. This is my partner. I'm married for life, but my child is also I'm gonna make sure that they are not harmed. But one thing that I really stuck for me recently was I wasn't rereading, but I read it in a new source, but it was something I'd heard before, was that your daughter will grow up choosing, expecting, and having the kind of relationship that she saw you have. And your son will grow up choosing the relationship that he saw you have. So yeah, you kind of are doing a lot to write the patterns for your kids, which is why it is so critical to shift them as quickly as possible. Now, when Melody came up and when I came up, neither of us had the support system that we would have liked to have had. And that's why both of us now work so hard to create that support system for others, so that there is a place where you can go and feel not judged. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but really have a safe place to go to feel supported, and also to learn the tools and the skills that you need, because it doesn't have to take you years. It can take months, to learn some basic skills that you will need to be able to shift your relationship permanently. And I've had many instances where actually I thought they were going to get divorced. Like divorce was happening. And now they're actually together and happier and healthier than ever before, because I taught one partner the skills, they applied it, and now the other partner has responded favorably. So it doesn't even have to always be this big dramatic thing. So I'm like, and that's not every case, but that's most of the cases that I've worked with. Mm-hmm. So I went through the pain, I feel like, sometimes so that they didn't have to. So they could at least if they went through the pain, it wasn't as bad, and they could get some help to turn things around before it got to be the point of no return. I have some other comments here.
I was just telling my son that same thing. I said, well, I learned these lessons so I can help others. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's really important when you, as a parent, either one takes a stand. It's not about vilifying the other parent. That doesn't work. It's about really, truly being the best version of you that you can be in each day, and being so kind and loving to yourself, giving yourself what your partner never gave you or didn't give you consistently. That's how you can demonstrate something different for your kids. So just because it happened doesn't mean that you can't break the cycle. I want to really emphasize this, because again, these are things that nobody told us. We were just stubborn. But it's really hard when you feel like no matter where you turn, you don't have an ally. Yeah. You don't feel like you have an ally. And we'll talk about this in a minute. It actually exacerbates the abuse cycle. Let me see what else we have here.
Yeah, I even learned, like you're saying about loving yourself, and I don't want to get off topic, but I was like, I want flowers. So I started buying myself flowers.
Yes.
So I started doing things like that, I want, I need a hug. Okay, I'm going to hug myself. I mean, it's little things, so that I could start giving myself even in little tangible ways like that.
Yes, I love what Shmiko's saying here. I thought that if it wasn't physical that I was okay. Boy, was I wrong. Broke the cycle after 23 years with the same person. Yeah. And she says, emotional abuse will affect children. My grown sons have communicated that to me now. They are 32 and 34. Yeah. So this is why we're really wanting to have this conversation, because no one is having it. And it's so critical, because when you are in that position and you feel like you're alone and that no one really understands, and that everyone's either judging your partner or judging you or judging both, it makes the problem 10 times worse. It's worse. It's way worse. And if you see people who've successfully left on their own, or maybe they haven't left, but they've been able to turn things around, they have an awesome support system. They have close friends or family members who have their back no matter what. If you don't have that, it's incredibly challenging to be able to break the cycle, because there's also other things like finances, stability for kids going to school. There's all these other factors that come in addition to just, okay, I want to break the cycle of abuse. There's all these other things that come in. And if you don't have good support, it's a lot harder to do.
Mm-hmm. That's so true.
Why? Okay, so the next question is, are there any solutions for this pandemic? And I specifically use the word pandemic because it's been thrown around now because of coronavirus. But this is, to me, is a pandemic that has spread, that people aren't paying the same. You really should be paying attention to this, like coronavirus, because it affects everything. It affects how kids learn in school. It affects how people can show up and perform at work. It affects how everything is affected by this problem. And it's very insidious because no one's talking about it. So a lot more of it can happen without, solutions, because no one's actually bringing these things to the surface because it's considered taboo, it's shameful. So what are some solutions, do you think, for this overall pandemic that we see of, people being silent about domestic violence, whether it's physical violence or verbal or emotional violence? What do you think, Melody?
Well, I think also just allowing someone to share without judging, without telling them what you should do and how you should be acting. Or, well, if I was there, you don't know what you would do if you were there, because you aren't. If you're not there, then you don't know what you would do. So it's really challenging to be able to say all those things that you think, but you can be. It's so important, I think, to be supportive, and the most important thing is no judgment, and to know that you are supporting, and to allow them to know that you're a safe person to go to, that you're not going to say, oh, well, that's too much, I can't hear you anymore. That was something that was very devastating to me, is when someone would say, I'm tired of it, and I didn't know what to do, but I'm looking for solutions in my own way. I was looking for support, I was looking for solutions, and I felt like people just really don't know how to handle it. I think that being able to be a safe person is a big deal.
I love that. I smile because I was thinking about Medea. Because in a way, Medea is like that person, right? Like it's an exaggerated character and some crazy stuff that Medea does, but Medea is like the person that everyone comes to with all their junk, right? And she's like, oh, who? What did they do? Where's my shotgun at? And it's just like he makes a joke of it in his movies, but I think there's some real value to that character when we talk about these things. When you can be the person who everyone feels comfortable to say what's actually bothering them, what will happen is you've created a safe space for them. And we try to do this for our kids, but we don't necessarily have the same extension when it comes to people where they're in situations that we think they should have avoided, or they should get out of. I remember what you said was so true. I had a friend who, she said, I'm only going to help you this once. And the next time I'm not going to do it again, because I've seen a friend who had a toxic relationship and it was just too hard on me. So because she was passing judgment on the spouse of this friend, she was refusing to help her friend. I was like, how does this work? But this is what happens in our society. This is where I come back to the world of boundaries, right? Which is one of my big things, because people feel like boundaries, and I've heard this all the time when I was in a toxic relationship: set healthy boundaries, set hard boundaries, draw the line. And I'm like, all that does, it's just a glorified ultimatum. It does not work, first of all, because you still have to interact with this other person. You have children together. It doesn't work for humanity. It sure as heck isn't going to work for the person who's the parent of your children. It's not going to work. Second of all, when other people draw their healthy boundaries that cut off people who are in need, they create more opportunities for that person to run back into even more toxic patterns with the person that they really need to be gradually moving away from, right? Because they're like, well, this is the only person, and I know how many times it's happened to me. This is the only person that actually understands me, the only person who's got in my corner, the only person who's a friend of mine right now, because all these other people are so busy judging. We're going to prove them wrong. That was my thought process back then. And frankly, none of those people were friends to me. Because to me, a friend is someone who's there when it's easy and there when it's hard. Now, it's understood that everyone has their limits in terms of what they can process and handle, but often it's a lot more than what we think, especially when we want to do it. So this is why I'm on such a big crusade to help people understand that boundary setting is not the solution. The solution is really understanding who you are and giving yourself permission to be okay with who you are in every moment. Because if I feel okay with who I am in every moment, there's a lot more that I can tolerate in someone else's pain and suffering without taking it on and feeling like I'm in pain and suffering. Because I know who I am and I know I can choose what's good for me in a moment. And even if in that moment I'm not the best company for them, I know I can get back to being in good company and give them a call and let them know that I care. But I can't do that if I'm still in codependence myself. So everyone's there judging the person who's in that toxic relationship where it's kind of very visible, but there's so many different levels of codependence. I was breaking it down for a client the other day because she was telling me something. I'm like, no, that's codependence. You two are still, you're not fighting, you're not hitting each other, but you're still playing the blame game and running around and trying to make each other take responsibility for their part of the problem without actually understanding that everything is within you. There is no problem unless you create that. You make that event or that thing a problem. So it goes both ways. So that's why, to me, my solution is so much more holistic. It's about getting people to really understand what their natural boundary is and let go of all the artificial ones that don't help. And that everyone learns radical self-acceptance, which is no judgment, starting with self before then not judging others. Because if you're judging others, for sure you're judging yourself first. And if you're not judging yourself, it gets a lot easier to not judge others. So coming from a place of radical self-acceptance as a friend, you think, why do I need to accept myself to help somebody else out? That's the only way you can, boo. It's the only way. You can only do it when you come from a place of wholeness within yourself. When you're happy with you, you have so many more resources to give to the person who is in need. Let me take a look at our comments. You can throw something in there.
Oh, I totally agree with that. Yes. I mean, and when you experience certain things and you know that it helps you to be able to have that, that love. When you know that who you are loved, then that's the basis. Yeah, it's just it's life changing. For me, it really was it just changed my whole life.
Absolutely.
Instead of having all these lists of shoulds or what I should, oh my gosh, just releasing that and allowing it. And I love, it's almost like, I love how you said, because it's like ultimatums, and they never worked. I mean, I was even given the book called Boundaries, which, it's great, but it didn't, sometimes it makes you feel more condemned.
Yes.
It
Yes.
does not make you feel empowered. All
No.
these things made me feel like less, like more like a worm, not transformed. It made me feel less and less powerful, and being told, well, all these things, it made me feel like I could even do, and it wasn't about, I wasn't even thinking like, yes, of course, with 7 kids, you need money. But I mean, I wasn't even thinking about those things. I mean, just emotionally, like I had people saying, you should be doing this at this time. Well, when my son is sick and everything, I mean, I don't have the emotional capacity to handle that at that moment. That's on the back burner.
Yeah.
My son's life is on the front burner. So we're going to take care of that first. And now when I have a more emotional capacity, and, to handle that, then yes, now let's do that, because I'm in a more stable environment and we're not literally fighting for life, And so, you have to know, like, that timing, you have to be ready, in the strength and the ready. I mean, the ready is really.
I love what Shamiko said here. She said, you look amazing. I agree. I agree.
I
So,
love you, Shamika.
oh,
I
so
do. I love her.
what you're
I
saying,
remember meeting her.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
this is such important stuff to really consider. If you guys want my whole mini series on boundaries, just type #boundaries in the comments and I will tag you on them. And the reason why, and I think I tagged Melody when we first connected over this boundaries conversation, because when you really understand natural boundaries, which are like, if you think of a natural boundary like the beach to the ocean, and how it moves with time, it's dynamic, it's not some hard line, it's not like a concrete wall. what does nature do to man-made boundaries? It poops on them. I mean, you see literally, you see bird poop, and you see vines and all kinds of things growing out of concrete. That supposedly the concrete is supposed to be so strong and so, impermeable. Man, everything can permeate that in nature. Just give it some time. So natural boundaries are very different from man-made artificial boundaries. And it means everything. When we're talking about any relationship dynamic, you really need to understand boundaries properly. Your natural boundary, which is very different from a man-made one, is going to be all you need to worry about. It's like one thing. And the question that I'll just give you this piece because I think it's relevant to this, and I'm really just trying to help for people who are either friends of or in this situation so that you can actually be of value to your friend and to yourself. Is it mine or is it theirs? And if you look at a boundary, a natural boundary is just going to tell you what's yours and everything else is someone else's. And that's it. It's not about drawing ultimatums. It's not about other people's behavior. It's not about any of that. And when you really understand that and you live that way, it is amazing how simple life gets. Parenting gets simpler. I mean, everything gets simpler. And yes, other people aren't going to always like that, but that's okay. That's not your business. Actually, it's just not your business at all, what they like and what they don't like. What's your business is what you know is going to help you to be the best version of you today. And that can be different from what it was yesterday or what it'll be tomorrow. And that's perfectly normal. You're human. So nature is not rigid. So we want to release the rigidity. The more we try to stay to rigid things, the more tension we create in our body. That's what creates the cancer. That's what creates the diabetes. That's what creates the headaches, the passing out, all this stuff. What you mentioned is something very common I saw with my clients all the time. It's like people passing out because their body just was like, I need to stop. This adrenaline is too much. I can't handle it anymore. Like, I'm not supposed to be in fight or flight 24/7, right? So all of that comes from the judgment, from the boundaries, from all of those things that are misunderstood. And instead, what we want to do is really, really focus on radical self-acceptance, releasing of boundaries, releasing of tension. And often, especially if it's a physical situation, you need to actually remove yourself from the physical environment before you have the ability to do that. You literally cannot physically do it in an environment where you don't feel safe physically. So it's really important and really urgent that you actually get the support that you need to get out physically from a physical environment. I'm not saying divorce. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying physically removing yourself is critical for you to start to get better. Mm-hmm. Melody, I'm sure you have some thoughts on that. You have all these health concerns.
I just think how certain things happen gradually, like when you're saying about the like nature and it's not rigid and things and really, because certain things happened. I mean, even for me, having the house fire, we ended up being on the same property, but in two separate like roofs, if you will, things like that. So it was a natural progression. It wasn't like all of a sudden, there were certain things I'm like, well, I'm just not going to do that anymore. This is just not going to happen anymore. This is just the way it's going to be. And so it wasn't like all of a sudden, for me, I mean, yeah, I had left at some points, but I wasn't ready for it to be, quote, completely over yet. And so, because I was still fighting for the marriage to be saved and salvaged and work and for it to be beautiful, I was like, I have the love, like, what can it be? That kind of a thing. Yeah. And so even as you explain that, I can see even for me in my own way, it was a natural, with ease, it was basically with grace and ease, there was a lot of ease with it. And, it doesn't mean it was easy, but because a lot of tough decisions had to be made and done.
And I want to make one thing really clear, because I usually start out a conversation like this with it, but I forgot to. It's really important that if you're not physically safe, I'm encouraging you now to get yourself into a physically safe environment first. I'm not saying divorce your partner. I'm not saying file for anything. I'm not asking for, but I'm just saying physically, it's I don't know, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's really hard to get on the mend if you're in a place where you don't feel safe physically. Like, it's just really hard. Emotionally is also important, but it's a little bit different because you can, like, there's a little bit more leeway there. When you're physically under threat, your body will literally produce chemicals that will prevent you from being able to process anything properly.
Yeah.
It's like you can't digest your food. You
Yes.
sure as heck can't digest unpleasant emotions. Like, nothing gets working properly until your body can at least feel like, okay, there's no imminent danger. There's no lion, bear, tiger trying to eat me.
Yeah.
So I'm just,
So true.
I want to say that, and I should have said that at the beginning. I'll probably put a note in the comments to just say, if you're not in a safe place, that's your first step. Then these processes, these tips about, how you can start to accept yourself, how you can learn your natural boundaries, how you can be in a place of non-judgment, those things can work better or at all once you're in a place where you can physically function properly, right? So that is something I do want to say. And if anyone has any questions about how do I get safe, how do I remove myself physically so I can start this process of being on the mend, just reach out to me. If you go on my profile there, just hit, message me, and I'm happy to share with you resources. I know Melody is the same. Both of us have dealt with all of these agencies and authorities enough that we kind of know where to guide you, or at least get you the hotline number or whatever you need to get you started. And we're here as resources. I'm volunteering myself as a resource. I would never charge you to just help you to be able to get yourself safe, because I know what it felt like to be in your shoes. And it's very important to me that you never have to feel alone. You should never feel alone, because you're not alone. Unfortunately, this happens to too many people, probably a third of the population, but we're just not talking about it. And I want to do my part to stop that, to make this a conversation that people feel safe to have.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so I think the last question for us today is, how can family, friends, onlookers help? And we've touched on some things, but let's kind of lay it out for the loved ones of people in toxic relationships. What can they do to help?
That's a good question. um, I think sometimes maybe, like, even if it's like a temporary, offering, like when you said having I was asked to find safe place, like to find, and sometimes offering that, like if you need a night or a rest or something. I mean, even offering those kind of things are very physically, those are physical things that can be done. I mean, that offering a safety, and like I said before about listening, with your just listening and not judging, those actually seem maybe like they're not a lot, but it's everything, because
Yes.
mentally you're going through a lot. Mentally you're being told all these things, and you're always, I mean, I know that Deborah and I had mentioned before, but I was always being told I'm crazy.
Yes.
I mean, it's as if it's as if I was being like, I grew up being told I was crazy. I was always like, oh, you're crazy, like whatever, I was always being told this. And then, so it was normal for me to be told this again in my marriage. And it's almost like sometimes what would happen, I tell, it's like being poured hot, if someone put hot coals on you, you would know, oh my God, you're burning. But stuff like this would happen, and it would be like, oh, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? And so it was always being twisted, like you were never, that made me, am I crazy? Like, am I not thinking right? Like, what's going on? And so there's always this doubt about yourself. And so sometimes just coming along and listening and going, you're not crazy.
Yeah.
You're right. Like, that would be tough. Like, being that person that says that sounds awful, I can understand why you feel that way. It can help the person to have more clarity of their mind.
Yes.
Because you're questioning your mind so much. At least, I mean, I know that you said, I think that you said the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yes.
Yeah. So that doubt of yourself,
I leaned very heavily on logic for a while, too heavily on logic, because I was always trying to bring up, because I'm in an engineering background, I was always trying to bring up all the data and the facts, and I would have these like ironclad arguments and still be like, I can't win. But I would try so hard to show like data, like evidence that this actually happened. I wasn't crazy. This happened, and this happened, and this wasn't supposed to happen. So you're right. And I love what you said there. You said, that sounds awful. I can see why you would feel that way. You didn't say, oh, he is such a B, C, D, E, F, G, and you need to get, you need to take him out, and you need to, there was none of that, right? Because that is not helpful to someone in this situation. Remember, we're encouraging for an individual to take stock of themselves. The only way out of abusive patterns is when you take full stock of yourself and you learn to accept all of it, the good, the bad, what you think is ugly, what you think is bad, all of it. When you accept yourself completely and you start to be kind to yourself, even though you have all these weird quirks or whatever it may be, that's how you exit an abuse pattern of any kind. Okay? Mm-hmm. But you can't do that if you're busy pointing the finger at somebody else. I can't emphasize this enough, because y'all in America, we watch Judge Judy and all this stuff too much. And we just get too busy judging people instead of just honestly
loving people
at ourselves. Because it's got nothing to do with the other person. Let me break this down for you. Your mother-in-law says to you, oh, honey, can you come by and help me with some odds and ends? Now, you know that's going to turn into a 6-hour, you listening to her relive the glory days. And you're like, I can't, I'm going to go like nuts, right? So what do you say? You say, well, I really have, X, Y, and Z in my schedule that I have to do. And you tell your friends, I set a healthy boundary so that my mother-in-law couldn't take advantage of my time. But the same 6 hours you go and you spend with your friends doing absolutely nothing, shooting the breeze. You didn't do any of the things on your schedule.
Uh-huh.
Why did you give your friends the 6 hours? Because you liked it. That's all. It never had to do with your mother-in-law or your friends or your schedule. It was just what you wanted to do. Stop calling it a boundary. You just don't want to do it, and just say, I don't want to. Just own it. Because when you own that that's who you are and what you want and what you like and what you don't like, you free yourself of anyone's chains.
Yeah.
No one can chain you. If you're like, I don't like, you don't have to call it anything other than what it is. It's so powerful. And we waste so much energy in this country judging. I say this country just because it's a cultural thing that I notice. We're so busy judging everybody, starting with ourselves, that we never actually give ourselves the love we needed. If we gave ourselves the love we needed, we wouldn't have to worry about what someone else is saying or doing. That stuff would just resolve. Like my life now is magical. Wherever I go, I'm not saying every second of every day, but people open doors for me. People stop for me. People say kind things to me. I'm always getting, God bless you. You're amazing. You're a godsend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the same Deborah that was getting all kinds of crap a few years ago. The only difference is that I've shifted my focus.
Yeah.
I've focused on what's actually I can do something about. It's not complicated. So don't make it complicated. Don't make it a long, 100 list thing. Just understand that if you take care of you, all those other things will figure themselves out.
Mm-hmm. I want to say one thing not to do is not tell them get revenge. Yes, oh, you need to make him pay. You need to do this, because then what you're doing, you're focusing on him again, or you're focusing on whoever, the spouse again, the other person, and it does not work. It is not helpful. It is actually hurtful. And I've had people, oh, well, you're not getting what you deserve. I'm like, I just go, I'm God's girl. He's going to take care of me, and I don't have to worry if he's not doing the things that he is supposed to be doing. And it's not between me and him. That's up to God. And so when I find that my resources are not based on what he can do or can't do, or how he's going to do, it's not right. I mean, so it relieves, and some people go, it looks like you don't care. It has nothing to do with that. It has, I don't need to get it from him. And well, that's not, it's, you can say it's not fair. It's not right. That's not up to me, because he has whatever you can call it karma. You can call it, God, the principle of sowing and reaping. It doesn't matter what you call it. If you're sowing certain seeds, it doesn't matter who you are, it's going to come back to you one way or another. Maybe it means like like, to me, I think that he doesn't have his kids' favor anymore. I mean, that's not my fault. That's the seeds you're sowing. So when you're sowing, it doesn't matter how it comes to you. And God's gonna take care of you. That's my that's how I feel. I mean, that's how he's shown up. That's how it's shown up for me. I don't have to worry about, but so don't, I think that's the worst thing you can ever do is like, go tell them to focus on that, go focus. And honestly, I don't like the books where it says the whole thing about praying, whatever, because that was focusing on their actions again. And
Exactly.
I didn't like that. I was like, it doesn't work. I mean, I know how good intentioned they are, but it's still focusing on their actions and how I can pray hard enough, I'll change their actions. No, it doesn't.
And their actions are not your business. This is a really important point that you're saying, because what you're describing, I say to my clients, it's like you're a pendulum, and I see them always kind of swinging one way, or then they swing way over to the other side. And I say, if you can just get still, right, and centered, everything else is going to whirl around you, will settle itself down. You don't have to respond to all of that chaos. You can just stay still. And from that place of stillness, if something truly is coming at you to harm you, you can catch it before you can. I call it Mr. Miyagi. You can do a Mr. Miyagi on it, with the chopsticks and the fly. You can do one of those because you have that focus.
Yes.
If you are all over the place focusing on other people and what they are or aren't doing or should or shouldn't do or any of that, you don't have the focus that you need to really be able to pay attention for the real dangers that might be there on the way. So this is so critical. I love what you're saying, Melody, and I'm so glad that we're able to have this conversation, because I've just been wanting to have it for so long, because I just feel like we need people to understand that it's not about all of this external stuff. It's not about all these things that you hear. It really doesn't have to be a shameful thing. Now, relationship patterns are part of life. There are always, it doesn't matter how wonderful a couple is, or how wonderful a family is, or how wonderful friends are. We all have places where our relationships will always need a little bit of an uplift or a boost up, because we're all still learning, and we're in an environment that does not really line up with human nature properly. So we're always getting like messages that aren't really that healthy, and then we have to kind of filter through them. So there's no reason. I hope that whoever's listening to this today understands that there is no reason to ever be ashamed about anything that has happened in your relationships, any of them. And it's not about calling somebody out as a bad guy. I hope you also got that. It's really about learning how to take care of you and getting to a space where you have the support that you need to move forward in a healthy direction. And then that other person, sometimes you might be surprised. They might surprise you and show up for you in a way that you could never have imagined. But even if they don't, you can still be at peace. You don't have to have any of this angst and pain and suffering and all this stuff that people go through when they're dealing with divorce or abuse or any of these things. You can allow a lot of that to go if you can just keep the focus on you and practice radical self-acceptance. And I know that that's easier said than done. And that's why Melody and I are here. We are here to support you. I no longer directly offer, I used to have a couple Facebook groups, and I used to offer a program directly for people to be able to turn their relationships around. Emotional abuse, I don't deal. If it's physical abuse, they have to be, physically safe before I work with anyone. I don't offer those publicly anymore, but if you feel like you want some support and some assistance from me, you're more than welcome to message me. And I have a free group. The link is everywhere. You see my profile on there. If you click on any of those images, you can join our free group, and there's tons of support there. And it's really a place that's very accepting and welcoming and safe. And I know, Melody, go ahead and you can tell them about what you have as well.
Yeah, I have a Facebook group too, and so just message me. And I am starting in July 20th. Yeah, July 20th. Make sure I get it right. A small group coaching program where it's a 6-week, and it is just rise up, to transform your life and to allow yourself to empower yourself. Really, that's what it's for. And it's not necessarily focused just on, this type of thing. It can be on any challenge that you're going through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So please message me on that.
Yeah, so those are two resources. And really, our focus today was we really hope that we're able to release some of that shame around
Yes.
this topic for you, for your loved ones, so that you can actually start having the real conversations that you need to have with people, that you can find the support that you need. It is there, but sometimes when we're in this dark hole, we don't know because no one said that. Okay, so now we're saying it to you, and we're offering ourselves as a resource. And whether you choose to hire us or not is not the point here. The point is just that you know that you have safe spaces to go where you will be able to heal, start the healing process. Okay, so this is really important. We both feel very passionately about this because of what we have been through, and we want to make a difference in this area. So please reach out. I'm going to leave a link in the comments, and Melody can do this well for her group, so it's easy for you to find, and you can just go ahead and click on there and hop in. And look forward to being able to see you and connect with you. And I will go through at the end and answer or respond to whatever comments we didn't get to today.
Thank you so much. This is really good.
This was awesome. I'm so on fire right now because this is the kinds of conversations that I love having. And I'm so glad we were able to take this time. Thank you for taking the time to join me here, Melody. I appreciate it so much.
I'm so thankful that you created a space for this to happen. I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So we look forward to connecting with you, and have a wonderful and safe and happy weekend.
Yes.
Bye.